1 minute. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Insert the music here. Insert the music here. All right. Good evening, tribe, and welcome to Merriwether's World, episode 92. That one was for you, Chris. All right. Tonight, special guest, internet security engineer D. Paul. Longtime person in the internet world behind the scenes who knows what's going on. So it's going to be exciting to talk to him. But for those of you who do not know me, my name is Dr. Mark Merriwether Vorderbruggen, creator of Foraging Texas, the website you saw sitting up there a second ago, author of Idiot's Guide Foraging, and lots of other stuff going on. If you go to the Foraging Texas website, www.foragingtexas.com, you can see links to everything I got my fingers in. And of course, one of the big ones, of course, is my real job as medicine man. So Medicine Man Plant Co., creator of assorted herbal dietary supplements. Yeah, and so this morning I put on a green t-shirt without thinking that far ahead. And so it's doing the green screen thing. And I could change, could have put a different colored t-shirt on, but I don't want to make extra laundry for Mrs. Weather. So yeah, but it is the Medicine Man. I don't know if you can see it. Anyway. Okay. Got a bunch of classes coming up. So let me bring that. Whoops, that's not what I want to do. This is what I want to do. Okay. Yeah. So upcoming classes here. January 20th is already gone. Spoke Hollow. So February 6th, they've added a second class in the afternoon. I believe there are still some openings. So it's over in the Wimberley area. And then these are 4-hour wild walks. And then the next day, Sunday, I'll be at Vista Brewing, also near Wimberley, doing 2-hour walk with beer type, more casual walks. On March 6th, I don't have it up here, but February 27th, I will be back out at Jasper, Texas with Uncommon Bees. So we'll be able to, meet up there, look at some plants, get some honey. Going to be awesome. March 6th, that's hard to say. I will be doing 4 1-hour walkabouts at the Jesse H. Jones Nature Fest thing. That's in Humble, Texas, just north of IAH Airport. You do have to call in and register because of the whole COVID thing. They can only have so many people in the park at a time. So, and they won't actually open registration for these 4 classes until February 17th. And then I got some other Zoom things and like that coming on. I'll be in San Antonio in April. So lots of stuff for you to check out. Oops, I need to bring my mouse over here now. Okay. Then, of course, the last thing I want to do before we start is shout out to my sponsors. So let me do this. Wazoo Survival. I think I saw Nick here already. Yeah, Nick is here. So let me actually bring that back. And so Wazoo Survival is who I worked with to create the foraging bandana. I and Dr. Nicole Appelian were blessed with working with Wazoo to make up this cool bandana. 12 of what we felt were the most useful plants in North America that you can find and use easily, but they have all sorts of great I need to get home sort of gear. So check out Wazoo Survival. Great, great, great stuff. And then also for the adventurers in you, and quite frankly, after tonight's episode, you may want to be running off and living in the woods. So I can very, very strongly recommend Campcraft Outdoors for durable, long-lasting, heavy-duty, not plastic. We're talking, wool and canvas and leather and steel, good stuff for long-term adventuring in the woods. The kind of I'm running off and never coming back again. Okay, so that's that. Let me bring this back now. Without any further ado, let me introduce D. Paul. I've known him for quite a long time, but I'm going to let him do a little background, and then we're going to start out talking about what Target, the store Target, did in 2012. So, Paul, why don't we start out, though, with you just giving a little bit of background and what you do and all that sort of thing, I guess.
How you doing, Mark? And thanks for having me on here. This is subject is always near and dear to me, just because it's something that ever since I first saw the internet in 1993-ish, I was appalled. I thought to myself, "Wow, anybody can post anything they want, and everybody can see it. What kind of craziness is this going to lead to?" And sure enough, it's led to some craziness here. But back in the BBS days, I was already online. During grade school, we were building the computer labs at the Apple IIes. My after school job was building computers at ChipSmart, very shady computer place, apparently.
I vaguely remember ChipSmart.
And I moved into wireless with a company called Eagle Broadband for a while, and we learned all about paging infrastructure, and I got my first hand at being a sole IT administrator for a company that was decently sized, and moved on through some other companies and built up experience, and pretty much just work in the security infrastructure engineering side of things. Mark and I had a discussion as to what to call me, and I just said an engineer, because I don't think anybody can be an expert in any of this. There's too much surrounding everything for any one human brain to consume it all.
I can believe that. Yeah. So cool. Trust me, he knows his stuff. Now, but one of the things that kind of led to this, some of you might even remember back in 2012, Target, the store Target, got into trouble because a computer guy on their staff realized, people have the little Target card that, if you shop at Target, you get assigned a number, and they start tracking all your purchases. And the guy was trying to see, are there any patterns he could see? And what he saw was pregnant women at different stages in their pregnancy bought different things. And so by seeing people buy these certain things in succession, it was a good indication that the lady was pregnant. And so Target started targeting these people for ads, for coupon books filled with baby, coupons, which freaked people out. Now, Target wanted to get the mothers, like, from the get-go. They wanted to build a brand loyalty, because then they knew they would get tens of thousands of dollars from these families. Then Target realized they were creeping people out with sending these, ladies books just on pregnancies. So they still sent them custom-made coupon books, but they had some baby stuff in it. They had wine glasses. It looked, random. So even, 2012, companies were already building digital use. So at this point, I'm just going to turn it back over to Paul and let him kind of explain what's going on.
So Mark's point is exactly where most of this stuff originated from, the idea of marketing. And it's very harmless. Let's just market towards these people. And this marketing gradually started building more and more complicated profiles. And as technology advanced, these profiles got more and more and more accurate. Now, the Target example was kind of an easy one, because you have 1 million plus data points, and you just picked a similarity, and you had a very clear grid. These days, with merely 4 data points, you can identify almost everything about a person. The AI has gotten that strong, and all the algorithms put together. Once you have 4 solid data points, whether it's for location, if you're trying to track somebody's location, as for 4 common places they visit, or if it's, for websites or for things that the person usually buys, these can lead to very exact patterns. And everybody always says that phone's listening to me. I just talked about cat food, and all of a sudden there's cat food on my phone. And it's not because the phone is listening to you. It's because of these data patterns and the way they've built them over time. And it wasn't just magically overnight somebody had a grand machine that could do all this. It started with a simple little barcode, and that little barcode on your Kroger's card or your Target card was that data point, and they could build their tracks off that. And at that point, a person, like you said, one of their IT guys realized, hey, I can write a little program for this. And it was very simple. It was probably C+ or QBasic at the time, and a little bit complicated, and some math in there, and he started figuring it out. But now you have machines that can make these same calculations 10,000 times over in a second. So what this guy probably spent years doing is now done in half a second with some of these AIs. And when we say AIs, it's not always, some
scientific robot brain.
Yeah, sitting there crunching out, going, "Oh, I see you." I mean, these are very simple algorithms. They're just mathematical patterns. They're not complicated once you have those data points. Go on.
Grocery stores, they track, when you're a member of the card, or even when you use your credit card, the what you purchase with a credit card ends up as a data point somewhere, doesn't it?
It does, but there were laws passed at one point where that information couldn't be transmitted to the credit card company as to what it was you're buying. It's only a dollar amount.
But if you're using a customer loyalty card,
right,
then the information, every item you bought is stored in their system.
And that data is also for sale to other consumers.
Okay.
So while it may be illegal for them to transmit directly to the credit card company the purchases that you made, the credit card company, using LexisNexis or one of these other giant brain engines, would be saying, let's purchase this Target purchasing data, and let's match it across the board here to see the exact dollar amounts. Okay, yep. So these 6 stores had this dollar amount. Hey, this person here bought this. So I mean, and that's a real simple one, but it starts to illustrate something we're going to talk about a little bit later about how these patterns are acquired. Okay. And
so companies are like buying the information from Target and other places and combining them.
Yes, yeah, that's where you get a lot of it from, and it seems very harmless, but I wanted to start out kind of mentioning again to 2012. Let's go again a little bit further back. Let's think 1993, 1995. You probably didn't even have a cell phone, and if somebody told you in 1995 that you were going to carry a device with you in the future that's going to track your every move, profile your every behavior, share that data with thousands of marketeers, governments, and agencies around the world, and you are going to gladly and willingly carry this, you're crazy. Who do you think you are? Strange man from the future? You're nuts. But then look at us today, and I think a lot of people have realized by this point that their cell phones are this device. And your computer behavior at home is also part of this, but really truly most people don't sit on the computer at home anymore that much. Most people are on their cell phone. They've got everything they need there, so it really even more centralizes it and carries out. Usually you have dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of applications on your phone, and all these applications share different data in different ways, and they all have their restrictions and their laws they must abide by. We have to use a unique identifier. You are identified by your phone number. You're identified by your IMEI number. Or you're identified by your GPS chip MAC address. But again, those are data points that can start to be matched.
Actually, let me just jump in here one second, because a person was asking just what do we mean by data points? And I think a data point would be any bit of information that can be linked to us, whether it's buying cat food or we went to a particular website, or we
Or you went to Starbucks.
went to Starbucks. Yeah, because like I said, especially with the phone, it can match our location and what we are looking at on the phone and stuff like that. So a data point really is any sort of information that can be skimmed off us electronically. Like I said, purchases, locations, that sort of thing. Okay.
And anything, and how many times you play Pokemon a day, how many times a day you check your stock portfolio, cryptocurrency, or whatever other app you have on there. Again, like I said, all of them will have the restrictions, and they'll very openly tell you, oh, we're not going to collect this data. We're only going to collect the data with a privacy marker on it, saying that this is your individual data, and then it goes off to a big pool that nobody understands. But you and I may not be able to look at that pool and understand, but there's plenty of machines that can. And
that can, yeah, like I said, if it only takes 4 data points to make a fairly accurate model, they're getting thousands of data points per day, I would think, for each person. Like every app you're looking at, everything you're doing on the app, everywhere you're going, all that is just building a digital mark, or a digital.
Your digital footprint, and that's kind of what we call this discussion tonight, is this digital footprint and what it means. And we can back up to a little bit higher level for a moment, and take all the tech out of it for a second, and just realize that it takes very little to identify who you are through anonymous data. And these pose risks, risks that somebody may not perceive, especially younger people today. The social risk for you're getting a job tomorrow and you had some photo that you posted on Facebook, or your friend posted it on Facebook. You didn't even post it. And you're like, oh man, that doesn't look good. I'm sitting here drunk and partying, and I was supposed to be at work the next day. And I'm trying to get a new job here, and somebody, which is actually very common now. It is very common for companies to, first thing to do when HR gets your resume, let's go look this person up on Facebook. Okay, what did they do here? What did they do there? They're friends with this guy that we fired. Let's flag that for a moment. So, that gets into a lot of the privacy settings. And again, we weren't going to go technical on teaching you how to do your privacy settings, but we'll cover a little bit and basically say, here's all the stuff that you're not going to want to do that you need to do to get to this point.
It's kind of like we were always threatened with our permanent record growing up. There is now a permanent record. It has every photograph. And
all that was a piece of paper in a filing cabinet, and that scared us.
It's not. It is a huge mass of data. Yep.
Yeah. So aside from that social risk of just, somebody else seeing what you're doing, say you've done a pretty good job of hiding yourself, and you make somebody mad on Reddit. This is a thing that becomes more and more common now. It's called doxing. Mm-hmm. And doxing is sort of a description for document dropping, was what it's short for. Uh-huh. And people use these data points, and they'll use open source intelligent networks, which OSINT, you'll find lots of stuff there about these publicly available, not free. Most of them aren't free. You'll pay 40, 50 bucks a month to have access to them, but you can go in and take access to all these data points and stuff that people have bought, the data that was public, and build your own tools to go find the person. So you've made this person mad on Reddit. They say that you're a bad person, and they're now going to go find out who you are and where you live, where you go to school, how many times a day you went to Starbucks, and they're going to drop all that information, and you've been doxxed at that point. And the public now knows who you are, and they're saying this bad person over here is this person. Go get them. Mm-hmm. And next thing you know, you got protesters showing up at your door, painting blood on your front door, saying you're the baby killer or whatever. And it happens. It's
very much so. Yeah, especially lately in politics and everything. Yeah.
Politics are a little bit easier because a lot of their information is public record. Mm-hmm. But you as an individual who may have done a good job of keeping yourself private can still be doxxed because these data points that you thought were anonymous or you were told were anonymous. There was another simple one called swatting, where they would find the general location of a person by their IP address, and they could narrow it down to this person lived in this neighborhood, and then they would find a few other data points to find out who this person was. And when they got mad at them in the game, they would call the SWAT team and say somebody's, so it's similar to doxing, but calling the police on you and have them show up. And there were incidents where people were killed in this, where the police bust in and somebody sits here and jumps up and pulls their gun out and they got shot.
Yeah, I've seen that where if someone online, an enemy calls the cops and says, "Hey, so and so is abusing his wife right now. I can hear her screaming. You got to go rescue her." And the cops come in, guns a-blazing. And yeah, there's been several cases of that.
And as we've discovered, recently, it's not hard to make somebody on the internet mad. So anybody who thought, this would never happen to me, I don't get involved in that kind of stuff. Well, no longer is it you're involved. You just happen to post an American flag on your page, and now you're a bad person.
Not or a family member or something. Yeah.
Right. But it's gotten as simple as that, and the ability to dox somebody has gotten broader and broader. So again, it'll cost you $40 to go get somebody's information out of a few data points that you have. But again, trying to look at some of my notes here.
Okay. When you focus on your notes quick, I'm going to go through our next sponsor.
All right.
So give me 1 second here. Okay. So herbs. And you know what? I didn't put up the Campcraft. There's actually a coupon for Campcraft outdoors. So like I said, if you're wanting to run out into the woods, you can save 10%. And now if you want to stay healthy and for some reason you don't want Medicine Man, definitely check out Ricardo Shilly Shally at Herbs and use the coupon code ForkingWeeds, and that will give you 15% discount. And what's great about him is he will sit down and do a Zoom interview, with you and talk about your life and figure out what's going on, and then basically come up with the herbal concoctions that way. So, and we also have Uncommon Bees, and like I said, I will be out there February 27th, and if you use the Forking Weeds with them, anytime you get 10%, and now until 9:30 tonight, you get 25% off, and they have all sorts of amazing different infused honeys, including different CBD honeys and beeswax stuff, and all sorts of care for inside and out. So check them out. Okay, now back to the good stuff. Okay.
Yeah, we like the Uncommon Bees. We met them at some of the markets we were doing.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, now that we're already scaring you, I did see one person's question. They're asking about how you block these data points from being tracked. The short answer is you don't. But we'll give you some ideas a little bit later, which again, you're not going to want to do them. It's going to be extreme, and you're going to be looking at your phone and your friends and family and going, "Do I really have to cut you off? You're my family."
That's the thing. We've made a deal with the devil.
But so now we've got you a little bit thinking about the risk. We take it a little bit further, and so not just because you made somebody mad, not just because you posted something that somebody else might think is bad. The next big thing is the exploitation factor. Say somebody works at a chemical plant and there's a particular chemical that they need access to, and it's a terrorist. They're going to have all the means and ways to track you if they want to target you as a person who may have access to something like that. And again, it's not just chemicals. It could be money. It could be just information. They want a list of your customers. How they're going to use it, we don't know. But you're the guy in procurement that happens to have that list. And similar to doxing, they go and find the information, and then you receive these letters that somebody's saying, "I know where you live. I can kill your whole family. You live at this address and you do this and this and this. I need this information, or I need this money, or this Bitcoin, or whatever else they decide they want," and push it out there. So it's not just a risk that, again, you enact. It's something that a bad actor can then come look for. And that's not nearly as common, obviously. We see more broad strokes. They don't not as many people are after such a targeted thing. They're after quick money, so they're going to send out this giant phishing email that wants people to click on something, and then they end up getting malware that locks their whole computer down and gives them a nice little screen that says, click here to buy Bitcoin with your credit card, and then send this Bitcoin to this address, and we'll give you all your files back. Which there are cases where people have paid and they've gotten their files back, but usually it doesn't paying out. They just pay and they still lose.
So in that case, you recommend if you end up, one of these malwares, don't bother paying. Just
any sort of ransomware, don't even try to pay it, even if it says $20, because that could be leading to another open door. That could be leading right to them saying that, okay, hey, we already actually hacked the site that you're going to go buy your Bitcoin from, so now we're going to get even more information. You gave us $20. Now we have your credit card information, and now you're going to be further exploited. So yeah, don't ever, ever, ever pay any kind of ransomware with any kind of money, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's go to the store and buy a little, prepaid card.
Yeah, card type stuff.
Yeah, that was another one. And again, some people thought that too may lead to a point that the information on that prepaid card is again a data point. So they can say that, all right, these are the prepaid cards that were used. They were all used in Houston. Okay, and now it's narrowed down. They bought this prepaid card at this Walmart on Main Boulevard.
Oh. And who else, what do we know about the people that live on Main Boulevard? And they can track you in. Yeah. So
again, it's giving away another data point, even if it seems like it's anonymous.
So let me just see if I'm understanding this. Let's say you go to Walmart, you buy a Visa, prepaid Visa card with cash to do something. Theoretically, then, let's say you were paying a ransom. They could see, you use this Visa card, but they could see from your cell phone tracking data that you went to that Walmart at a particular time, so they can figure out who bought the card, sort of thing, and where they live. And
again, that is an absolute distant, far out risk to get to that level. I mean, again, working in security, we get to fight the battle sometimes where we're saying, well, if you do this, you have this risk. And we're sitting there looking at it going, well, yeah, that's a risk if this is in place, and this is in place, and this is in place, and this computer's exploited, and this perimeter is exploited, and somebody left a root password on this device that's exposed to the internet, then that's an exploit. And so a lot of these things are like that, where, there would have to be sort of that perfect storm or chain of things, but it's not impossible, but it's not very probable in those cases. But the risk of ransomware is very possible. The risk of doxing is very possible. The risk of exploitation is not as possible. It's usually very targeted, but it can happen.
That leads to a question. They talk about taking over the camera of people's computers and so forth. And I admit, I put tape over my cameras when they're not in use. I just figured, better safe than sorry.
Yeah, well, and those are usually based on broad spectrum sort of vulnerabilities. The specific hardware or computer that you're using, which, a lot of computers are very common. You're using a Dell, and it's probably 1 or 2 years old. So they get very broad strokes with these exploitations.
Okay.
Now, they can be targeted. Again, they can be targeted if somebody's looking for you, but they have to know a lot more information.
Okay. We got a good question here. What site are Doxers and Swatters buying the information from? LexisNexis was one of the oldest and biggest ones. There was even an old school one, and I knew some of the people that developed the software, called Goldmine or something like that. It was used for auto sales. Yeah.
An interesting side note. I knew the guy, and apparently he was the largest tax evasion fraud case in history of the U.S. I saw the news, and then I'm like, I know that guy. Fortunately, it was his dad and not the kid that I was friends with. Yeah, so those are some of the risks with just the data in general. And you can step a bit further. And I know Mark and I have mentioned these things a little bit, and again, not to get too political, but the technocratic state. This is something that's as old as government itself, and technocratic is kind of a misleading word because it had nothing to do with tech that you're thinking today. It was the intelligent elite, the brains of society that considered themselves almost deities that began controlling the government. They were the higher tier of Plato's design of government, and
the wisdom kings or something like that.
Yeah, and we again, these are things that we think about, and we're like, that's not going to happen in our world. We're not going to be 1984. We're not going to have these kind of things to worry about. But in a way, we already see it. And again, not to get too political, but Dr. Fauci is the idea of a technocrat. He is a intellectual with a lot of experience and a lot of influence and position in the government.
Bill Gates, another.
Bill Gates would be more of a silent partner at this point in time, because you don't see him up there on a podium talking to America.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, he hasn't become that, oh, this is a figurehead that we look to yet. But that's the fear. That's kind of the concern is, how long is it until you have Senator Bill Gates and Representative Zuckerberg, and then in the same position, still having the control over your media and your social interactions that they do now. And we've already seen the behavior of sticking their fingers in the social interaction and manipulating it. And we're giving all this information away. We don't ever second guess it. We don't ever question. I'm just posting a few photos of my family. I'm just talking to my friends. It's not a question of how innocent or whatever you're doing is. It all builds that profile. And while you may be a normal person today, tomorrow you may be an enemy of the state. And the next day you may be a terrorist completely considered by the state. These are scary things, and we don't like to talk about them because we don't want to think that way. We don't want to think that our own government's going to turn us into a terrorist. And I have this whole QAnon thing. I was telling my Q friends back when this stuff first started, so just wait until you're considered a terrorist. And you look at the things that we have in place, like the Patriot Act, and how quickly these things can start to cascade into something. And that's why we talk about these data points. And no matter how innocent you may think your data is, it can be used against you at some point, whether it's by an individual doxing, whether it's by a state actor exploiting you, or whether it's by your own government turning against you. And it's sad to even think about it, but it's a reality, and we have to think about it.
Because everyone here has a footprint going back really decades now. Well, maybe two. Probably around 2000. When they really started. AOL online and all that. Some of that stuff is still there. I actually used to laugh at my friends that said, "Yeah, the government is recording every email and everything you're doing." It's like,
in full hat, man.
Now it's like, oh, they were right. Do you want to bring the dark web into this at all, and anything on there, or is that like
that's something that I have avoided like the plague? Because again, you want to talk about any sort of collection of data. The tools and the people that are on there have probably just as much access as your NSA and your CIA do to find out who you are. You don't want to touch anything at the dark web with a 1,000-foot hole. Even if you think you're playing, you better be on a computer that you're going to throw away 10 minutes later, 1,000 miles from your home. It is that dark.
Yeah.
And I've never taken a machine onto the dark web. I mean, just for that purpose, because I don't want to risk that exposure.
There's all these YouTube videos showing you how to do it and things. Was it the Modern Day Rogue? I think it is, as a YouTube channel, and they're
Now, see, there's a fuzzy parameter to the dark web, and again, we're going to talk about some of this as we get to some of the tips and ideas. But Tor browsers that weave you through the internet and exit you out in Belgium, and then 10 minutes later exit you out in Germany, and then 10 minutes later exit you out in China, so that keeps your anonymity. And those are tools that you use to get to the dark web, but a regular person can use them as a tool to obfuscate what they're doing. And you may ask, why would you want to do that? Again, I'm just posting benign stuff. Well, you think it's benign until I've got some chest pains. Let me go look at WebMD here. Okay, yeah, it's indicative of possible heart attack. Okay, I'm gonna go research heart attack symptoms. I'm gonna go research, numbness in my left arm, and all of a sudden you've got all this browsing data that paints a picture. Now, again, right now this stuff's supposed to be private. Somebody can't use it against you, HIPAA laws or whatever else. But what if,
the insurance company
or State Farm decides to write a law and saying that we are now going to profile your internet history to check for pre-existing conditions. And again, we think they're way out there. We think this stuff is bizarre and it's not real, and we told ourselves that years ago to things that we see perfectly normal now. So when you're browsing, if you're just looking at Google for horse feed at the local feed store, sure, you don't necessarily need to be under a browser that's doing any sort of Tor or proxying. But if you think that you're going to do something that has anything to do with your banking, anything that has to do with your medical, it doesn't hurt to use a proxy. Now, you say that, but then you say proxy, free proxy. Somebody will go on here and they'll find a tool in their add-ons. It's like, oh, anonymize my website. So we're opening up another level of risk here. It's like, hey, a free proxy. I'll use that while I'm going to my banking information. That free proxy could be a honeypot that's doing SSL decryption on the fly while you're going through there and collecting all that information also. So if you're going to use a VPN, you probably want to use one that's a paid service. And there's lots of them out there. You'll look at VPNs for internet privacy, and you'll find the big players. I don't generally like to mention brand names.
Yeah. But like I say, when something is free, that means you are paying for it in another way. And with the free stuff, it's information you're letting them gather from your life.
We still have some level of protection on Gmail, but everybody was saying, hey, awesome, free email. Not everybody has a Gmail account, and that's in the control of people that we may or may not trust in the near future.
We got a question here. What country has the most tech to collect these data points?
I mean, I'll probably say the U.S. because we have the CIA, we have DARPA, we have NSA, which is one of the lower level threats in that player's game. But DARPA is the one that you're going to look at stuff that they probably worked on 20 years ago that seems like future tech to you now. I mean, the classic one was the SR-71 spy plane. that was a almost 25-year-old plane whenever the public found out about it.
It's still amazing today, really. Yeah. Carol asks, is texting a possible data point? Yes.
Yes, SMS texting is. SMS texting is your absolute lowest level of protection when communicating because it's going through cell towers, it's going open text through the air in most cases, very, very often no encryption level whatsoever. And so your regular texting is probably your least secure. There's lots of tools now. I think Signal's the biggest one. Yeah. And
Telegram, I think, is...
Telegram's another one, but Telegram is centralized. We'll talk about centralized, decentralized services a little bit here and kind of cover that too. But so any centralized service has the ability to be a man in the middle.
Gotcha.
I will gladly tout Signal because it is a pure end-to-end rotating multi-point encryption verification on each and every level that the data is secure going back and forth. And most phones nowadays, you can select Signal as your primary texting app. Now, the person on the other end, when you text them, they'll have to go download Signal to use it. And that's, kind of what we talked about earlier when I was saying, some things you necessarily don't want to do because they're not as convenient. And if you start to really care about it, or you start to see it affect yourself or other people in your life, buckle down and start making some of these decisions and, switch to some sort of secure communication. And again, it may be as simple as, hey, we're in DC, we're gonna go check out the Capitol today. You have no clue there was a riot happening. You were just there at a nice, inauguration goodbye president party, and next thing you know, you're in the vicinity of something that now makes you a terrorist.
Well, it's like, yeah, you had mentioned when we were talking last time how the cell towers are tracking your phone. The people can figure out where your phone has been.
Yeah, that's old.
In large crowds, the accuracy drops, and so like in a riot, if building X over here is being burnt down, but you just happen to be driving by the edge of it purely innocently, but because there's so much data swamping going on, your phone puts you right in front of that building at the time that it was firebombed. They go, aha, you are a suspect.
Yeah, and what we were talking about there was the GPS drift. And anytime you have very low signal or high usage, you'll see that in any sort of, like if you're looking at Google Maps or something, all of a sudden you'll see yourself jumping around. You're like, what's going on? You're usually near some kind of big event, whether it's a sporting event or whether it's something like that. And again, once these technologies start to get used for investigative purposes, then you think about the Olympic bombings that happened way back when. There was some stuff that was done with cell towers to try to find out who was in the area, and it wasn't very accurate or admissible. But nowadays, that data is becoming more and more accurate and possibly used against people. We're setting a precedence right now the way we collect this data. So it's all. But what you're talking about too with the near. So it's searching it. Yeah. I mean, it always helps because what incognito mode does. So Zian's question on the screen is it generally erases cookies. Cookies are one of your biggest web browsing tracking points, and this gets very significant. Whenever you look now, you'll start seeing these notices because the laws are passed that say that pages have to tell you when they're collecting this data. And some of them are friendly enough to actually tell you who they're sharing the data with. So if you go to like MSN and you get one of these alerts and you click on it, you look at it and you start seeing that we're, again, anonymously collecting your data and we're sharing it with this literal list of 1,625 other third parties. Now you may have your security settings in your browser says do not accept third-party cookies. Well, that doesn't matter because your first-party cookie, your initial one that the site you're on, is sharing it with those people for you. So yes, incognito mode is always something worth using. And even on your phone, Firefox has their privacy browser. So it's always in incognito mode. And trying to start using something like that is a good start for people. That's a good starting point to just try and use this regularly for the Firefox. What it's called offhand here.
Yeah, the mode. So I switched over to Brave.
Brave
one browser, but. Yeah.
And switching over from Google to DuckDuckGo, which is another one that promises to not share your data.
Yep.
There's a couple other ones. You can again just kind of go for private search engines and find lots of them, but that's still the biggest one now. But taking that first step, getting used to not having things autofill for you and not having pages automatically log you in, and by using this Firefox secure browser will give you that step into the right direction. Because these are things that people have gotten very used to. There's people that probably don't remember the password for 30 sites because they've automatically signed in for you.
Yeah.
Where can you?
Is there a place a person can go to learn data law 101? Like what is allowed, what isn't? Or I mean,
So a good place to go for this is called EFF.org. They're Electronic Frontier Foundation, and they are your key players in helping influence legislation for any of these kind of laws, helping give our legislators some ideas of these laws. They have tools, as you can see there on the page that Mark's brought up. It's a Privacy Badger, and there's another one they have, but they have some resources there also. Let's Encrypt was kind of like your first engine that gave people the tool to start encrypting their own websites and encrypting their own data without having to pay big bucks to do that. They go over your digital rights. As you see there, there's one for the COVID digital rights. And this is probably the best place to start learning what sort of things are going on in that realm. And I'm sponsors of these guys. Love them. They send me cool T-shirts when I give them enough money.
That was going to lead something else. No, okay.
Yeah, we're kind of
whatever you can do to separate you from your data, and so encryption and the autofill. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. So again, I promise I'm not going to give you much technical jargon. But going over your phone, you will find out that your default settings. So if you've never gone through every application on your phone and checked the settings, they're default to allow a lot of things. And a lot of people got used to, they'd install an application and it would ask allow, and they just click through them and go on. But why does this one need access to your text messages? Why does it need access to your pictures and data? You have to ask yourself this question whenever it's coming up, and you'll have whatever messenger on your phone, and it'll want access to your pictures and data. And that's because it wants, if you want to share a picture of somebody, you can do that. But a lot of people don't realize that you can actually tell your phone never allow, or always ask, or always leave off. And whenever you go to share it, it'll say, hey, you need to allow this in order for me to share this photo. And it takes 2 or 3 clicks to go over. Click, allow, send photo, click, disallow, done. But again, it's a convenience. It's that convenience. Everybody gets used to everything just working like a click, and it gets very hard to get out of that cycle.
Yeah.
And your phone, Google, if you have a Android, Apple's actually a lot better about it, not setting everything to allow data. But if you have Google Maps on your phone, it is designed out of the box to track your every location and share it with Google constantly. And you're going to go into your phone, and you're going to the settings, and you're going to go into location data, and you'll see the little click button that says, let's check your privacy policies, and then you'll get to see, you'll see your data, and you'll start scrolling through it, and you can see, wow, this has been tracking me since 2010.
Yeah,
it has my entire drive, but every trip I've done.
Yeah.
And so you have to go in there and you have to say, delete all this data, never collect this data. And there's plenty of websites out there, so you can basically say, securing my Android, or making my Android more private, or making my Apple more private, and they'll give you all these steps to go through.
So Google, increase privacy on whatever cell phone you're using, and they will give you a list of things to check and to uncheck. And okay, that's good information there, especially.
That's why I said I wouldn't go through the details, because it's easy for you to find. If you desire to do it, it's out there. All you got to do is search, increase my privacy.
Let me just make a note here. Actually, we're going to say duck go. Make my cell phone more secure. Okay. Yeah, DuckDuckGo is going to be the new verb.
Yeah. So if we
A
talked
person,
about,
a person is asking about Google Maps and using Google Maps. And if you're logged into Google, or if you aren't logged into Google, I'm sure it's still recording information where you're thinking of going, how you're going to get there.
yeah, and you can actually secure it. I mean, the laws still allow you to go in there and remove this data and secure it. They have to give you that option at the moment, and those are some of the things you'd learn on EFF.org if you start reading deep into it. It's a lot of heavy reading. It's not going to give you this nice little 1, 2, 3 list. Here's your rights, but that's where you'd find a lot of that information.
Okay.
So you can't.
Oh,
Sorry.
Yeah, a person is asking about identity theft. It seems like most of the stuff is more being used by the big corporations, but it could also be used for identity theft. Like now the credit cards have that little chip, so you just have to wave it in front of the thing, the RFID. So I got like an RFID blocking wallet, so like can't just walk by and scan my Tusha.
Tinfoil hat. Just put on.
Yep. Got me. I'm wrapped in tinfoil.
Keith wallet. Identity theft. Lamona asking there, how does that become problematic in correcting? That is actually a completely almost uncyber attack. It's gotten so simple to take somebody's identity. Online helps in the sense of if you're going to go through the trouble of trying to do mortgage fraud, you can go find that person's mortgage online if you have the right access. If you signed up in LexisNexis, powerful tool for research, but a big, ancient in the sense of the internet collection point. It's been there almost since the beginning. Yeah. It costs a lot of money. I mean, LexisNexis is like one of those things. It's like a $2,000 a year subscription for basic access. But a lot of corporations and universities and stuff like that, I don't actually know if they still use it, but I mean, it was a big thing for a long time. But so you go and you find this information about the person if you're going after mortgage fraud or something like that. But these days, the identity theft that happens is usually just from Social Security number, and most everybody's Social Security number has been exposed in one way or another. Yeah. If somebody ever says, "Has my identity been stolen?" the answer is yes. The question is, has it been used yet?
So it's something like LifeLock. Well, or there's different things.
LifeLock, yeah, that's why those guys exist, because it's going to happen. It's almost there's probably not a single person on here who hasn't had some fraudulent charge on their credit card. And how that is just somebody somewhere, whether it was at Target or the gas station or online, skimmed that number and they went and used it somewhere else that didn't have as high of security standards. Yeah.
Here's another really good question. How do you feel about the 360 tracker on your phone so family members can find where you're at? Or even like the Find My Phone feature and all that. It's telling Apple where the phone is.
Again, Apple's a lot better about this. The Find My iPhone is, and you go read their privacy policies. It is not constant. It is a one-time ping, and the next time there's another 5 pings later, that last ping drops off. So it's only keeping like the last 5 points that phone was at, and they describe that in the privacy policies.
Okay.
Again, you may have remembered the case on some sort of bombing or attack that they were wanting to unlock the terrorist iPhone.
Yeah.
Battle between the FBI and Apple saying, "Hey, you need to give us the core encryption keys to backtrack this phone." And Apple said, or Tim Cook at least, said no. That means that we're basically going to go erase years and years and years of our effort securing our customers just so you can get into one person's phone. Now, in the end, the FBI gave up. They said that they gained access to the phone. There's still some mystery surrounding that. Some people said that, whatever Israeli cybersecurity firm helped them do it, and they said, "No, we did not. I don't know what you're talking about." But yeah, so Apple has a lot more stuff on it that is inherently secure, but the Android has a lot more stuff that you can control to secure. So back to the question about the Find My iPhone or the family stuff. Again, read their privacy policies. See what information they do share and how they share it. And again, it's the stuff that nobody ever goes and bothers to read.
And it also brings up the case that that's maybe what they're saying now, but if they change the policy or the government changes the policy saying you have to share that information with us, the government.
Right. And that's so the recent one with Parlay, they shot themselves in the foot. That was bad programming all around. They failed to strip off what's called EXIF data on photos. You generally have the location. Now again, Facebook to their benefit, they strip that data for you when you upload a photo, so you don't actually have to go do it. But so people aren't conscious of it now. They've never had to go strip the metadata off their phone or the document before they uploaded it. And so whenever somebody like Parlay comes along and they don't do that, suddenly people are giving away a ton more information. And often with your phone, it may even have as much detail as your phone number and your name and your location and the time you were there in that metadata. Yeah. So it's like, forget collecting data points. You just gave it all to us.
Yeah. Here's a problem. Could keeping sensitive information stored on an external hard drive or USB help to keep personal document sensitive information more private? I would say yes, until you then do something with that information.
Well, so a lot of what we're talking about is not necessarily that private document that you have with all your bank account numbers on it. It's almost like those kind of thefts are child's play now. Yeah, you might steal $1,000 from somebody, but you figure out how to exploit the information of 1.5 million people. Suddenly that data becomes very valuable, very lucrative on these markets. So it's almost like stealing, Joe and Dave's bank account is not even a big deal anymore. It still happens. People still after the quick buck. But obviously in those cases, keeping any of that information on a secure drive is useful. Now, again, you want to take that a step further and you want to encrypt that drive. But then don't lose the key. So what'll happen, somebody will encrypt a drive on a computer, that computer goes dead, they throw it away, and then go, I need to get something off that drive. Oh, and I can't read it. So you got to be careful of that too. Locking yourself out of your own data. So I mean, I can't really show you. I've got a stack of old laptops down here. Every laptop that I've had in the last 10, 15 years is still kept here if I have to go back to it for any reason.
Okay. Except for here's a good question. How secure would you consider the cloud? Even like Dropbox and things like that, storing. Again, and for the way it sounds, it's like that's too small of peanuts almost. It's
the cloud is just somebody else's computer. So how secure do you feel storing your car in your neighbor's garage? Your neighbor's probably not going to steal your car. That's not their intent. And just like the cloud storing your data, their intent's not to steal your data. In most cases, they want to secure your data because they want your business. But again, how secure do you feel putting your car in your neighbor's garage?
There's an old saying that a thief doesn't want to hit you hard enough to kill you. He just wants to hit you hard enough that he can take your money, and then you can go back to go back to work the next day, earn more money, and then next week he can hit you again. You want to milk the person. So stealing the simple data like that, you're saying it's not as valuable as building a model and then persuading the people to do something of their own free will.
Yeah. And then again, that's like we talked about. It's stuff we don't want to think about being the way it is, but it's you got to keep it in your mind somewhere. You got to at least, because you may not be tinfoil hat today. You may be, hey, I've got a good job. I want to come home from work and have a beer and relax with my family and tuck the kids in bed. I don't want to mess with any of this stuff. I don't want to be part of it. And that's not always a promise. Yeah. It's a good hope. It's generally a reliable bet. But It's not a promise.
So what should people be doing?
So again, we covered the
Start with the cell phone and then work to desktop computers and day-to-day life.
I'm not going to tell you to go buy a flip phone and stop using everything. But yeah, we talked about using a secure browser, using something that doesn't track your search engine. There's deeper steps you can take to do secure DNS, whether it's through a local DNS at your house, like a Raspberry Pi turned into what's called a Pi hole, or using open DNS services that kind of help hide some of the stuff from your.
Yeah.
So again, that's why I don't want to get too technical with things, but so let's keep that high level. Secure browser.
Check your phone settings, go through each app and see what you said it could have access.
Follow the guides. There's plenty of guides out there that'll help you do it. There's even YouTube channels that go at a nice pace that you can walk through it with them. Make sure it's a more recent channel because you may have 10 versions of iPhone different by now. Never save your passwords on your phone. Yeah. People very often get the alert that says, "Hey, save this password so you don't have to type it in later." Never.
Yep. Anything you put on the internet, even in secret.
Well, that's on the internet. That's on your phone. But as soon as one of those internet-connected apps is exploited in the right way, that becomes a problem. And let's take a step off of the phone here for a second and talk about our IoT devices. I'm not even going to talk about Alexa or Google Assistant because I would never touch them. Not ever. I've got one sitting behind a firewall in a separate network that I play with, but I don't use it. Yeah. But you think about something simple like, hey, this cool robot vac, or hey, this Ring doorbell. If you have a Ring doorbell, you have to go into the application and you have to opt out of sharing that data. Now, they've actually taken a step further now, and you can actually share the data only with law enforcement, or and not share the data with other third parties, because before the question was law enforcement wanted to use them. So law enforcement has by default access to your Ring camera. Now, think about that for a second. Seems like a great idea. We love our cops. We trust our cops. That's the way it should be. But that may not always be the case in every situation. So think about how you're sharing that data. Your Roombas and your other devices that are internet connected that you talk to with your phone, baby monitors, some of that. All these things will have privacy settings.
The smart house where my boss, he can control his garage door and all the door locks with his phone.
And there's actually some old tech, the old X22 tech that's actually really secure. And it's like if you go way back 15, 20 years ago, it's a lot better to use than the stuff they have now. And I was showing my wife, so it's like after Christmas, I'm like, hey, one of the neighbors got a Roomba. They didn't even set up any secure. By default, the Roomba connects to any available access point. All I have to do is turn on a more powerful access point and let the Roomba start running around and utilizing an API that's built into the device. I had a map of their house, and I'm like, hey, honey, look at this. And I think their bedroom door is closed. That's the house over there, because it didn't go in that room. It must have stopped at the door and went around. So again, it seems like somewhat harmless data, but having a map of the interior of everybody's house would be awesome for somebody who's wanting to go on any sort of raid or theft or government intrusion. So any of those devices, anything that you connect to from your phone, go look for the privacy settings. Make sure you set up passwords and don't use the default passwords out of the box, because that's exactly what happened to that Roomba. There was a default password of 8888888, and
so many people do that. And it was like that one casino in Las Vegas. A thermostat was part of the Internet of Things, IoT, and hackers were able to get in through an unsecured Wi-Fi thermostat to get into the hotel's computer system or the casino's computer system.
And those similar thermostats have been a similar intrusion in several things. So there's been some basic ones like the Nest and stuff like that people have gotten that have some exploits. But we're talking Honeywell and Linnell. And to these companies' credit, they absolutely, when you put this in, they hand you a document. They say, you follow this document to the letter. Do not skip this step, or you will have somebody hack your network. But people will still choose not to do it.
Yep.
I work with Honeywell and Linnell a lot, so I've seen these documents, and they are very big, bold, front page. Take these security steps first before you plug in the panel. Now that you've plugged in the panel, take these security steps next. And again, they put it in front of you, but all these other things that are consumer devices, you have to go look for them, and that's going to be everybody's obligation or homework. Check your phone and say, okay, what do I have in my house that my phone connects to, and go check those settings for what they can do to make sure that there's an extra password on it.
I got a question. Something that I've kind of discovered over time, like things that plug into computers via USB. There's been cases where it's been manufactured in China and they have a little chip or something in that. So when you plug a seemingly a USB powered fan, it still actually has a Trojan in there that reports back to the Chinese mothership. You have some of these, don't you? And I know in the oil industry, it was very common for companies to just drop USBs outside competitors' companies, knowing some person was going to take it, plug it into their network, and there's some sort of suspicious hacker tool on the USB. So yeah, never plug things in.
So these tiny little critters here. This was one of the ones that came from one of the talking dolls that you could connect to your phone and teach it your name so that it would interact with you in a way that was personalized. And it was one of the devices I was researching, and it's super simple and it's super small, and it doesn't have it's got all the operation of the toy along with the operation to be able to take that next step with a SSH telnet session or whatever from your phone to the internet to then come back to the device. So your internet's here, your phone's talking to this thing on another chip, it's a Bluetooth or whatever, and suddenly becomes a relay point. Yeah. So it's not always as cut and dry and simple as oh, hey, this thing doesn't have a password on it, and that's what our problem is.
Here's a good question. The Fitbits and all these exercise things that are tracking you, and anything that's talking via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, it's a security hazard.
So did the military finally tell people they can't wear Fitbits? Or
I want to say they finally said they can't. I know, especially like they say, patrol routes and so forth, because there was about a year ago, there was kind of a stink about that, but maybe they are still doing that. And of course, you also have the issue, well, yeah, I was told I can't, but they'll never catch me, so I'm going to keep doing it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen the size of some of the Fitbits now. They fit in the hem of your pants if you wanted them to. And it's not even just a Fitbit. The phone themselves can be used as the same thing. So, if you want to take the phone a step further, again, we said, go back to the flip phone. You don't necessarily have to do that. If you want to be tech savvy, there are a couple of companies, and there's more of them out that are putting out basic Linux-based smartphones. And there are people that, if you want to pay a pretty penny, put out phones that are already secured. I think Black Phone was one of the ones, in Silent Circle for a while there. But it was $1,000 phone at the time that phones were still $199. Now people don't balk at $1,000 phone, apparently.
Apparently not. Okay. Along with people, industry espionage type stuff, what you are doing at work. And Jonathan also asked a question earlier on about the power grid and how foreign nationals are now being allowed to use their equipment to maintain and support our power grid. Let's see, here it is. Okay, yeah. The news cycles are selling a new power grid cyber attack risk in their articles. I can actually answer something that's my brother is in charge of security for a power plant up in Alaska. And he says they get about 4 attempts a day at people trying to hack into it. And some are very, very, very astute. It's not just some script kiddie type thing. It's actual stuff, doing the USB drop and stuff like that.
Coming from industries and working around a lot of stuff, I've had a lot of work in SCADA networks and process control and those kind of things. And most always, these things want to be layered in onions around. In a lot of corporations, you'll see some pretty lax security in the regular network. But if you have any kind of process control, any kind of machinery, even if it's just a giant mixer, these things want to be layered and have multiple firewalls and checkpoints to go in there. Like I've seen examples where nothing is allowed to talk into that network. There is a sub-network called a DMZ in between the internal, not even the internal, the process control engineering network, a DMZ, then the process control network. So that you have to then, from the process control engineering network, talk to the DMZ. That one DMZ machine then has access, but it's got 2-factor authentication. That's another point I didn't bring up. You've probably seen it by now. Your bank accounts and other things have what's called 2-factor authentication, where it texts a message to your phone. Again, not infinitely secure, but it's a extra step that's more secure than just your password.
Yeah, and I have that on all my accounts.
Anywhere you can use that, use it. And for a long time, people were pushing to use Google Authenticator, but now I don't trust Google anymore.
No comment. All hail Google. I, for one, welcome our new Google masters. So that's the thing. Misdirection. What can we do to screw up the data that they have?
So I believe I talked to you about this, and I'd actually gone through some efforts to try to do that. It was actually pretty quickly squashed, and knowing that the search engines on Google are tracked, I started feeding in just random searches, and it worked really well for a while there. I would get just the most bizarre ads, and it wasn't, anything even remotely. It's like Ukrainian horse feed. It's like, I didn't even, this is just random words, and now I'm getting Ukrainian horse feed. but Google very quickly said, there's too many searches from this IP address. We're not going to block you from searching on the Google engine unless you click this box and these boxes on this picture and prove you're a human every time. And I'm sure you've all seen that before, the prove you're a human, clicks and picture boxes. Google does that too. YouTube is Google. Some people don't realize that YouTube is Google, and they'll do that sometimes if you're doing too many searches.
So yeah, if you're actively, if like you see, write a script that just every second, puts in 3 Google searches, Google figures out, hey, okay, we're gonna.
I mean, there is entire leagues of people that are working on AI poisoning techniques. And again, we call them tinfoil hat, we're saying that they're crazies. But then AI is also working on very active ways to detect poisoning and stop it before it happens. So it's sort of this kind of race. And you've probably seen the sci-fi movies where they're like, let's get this virus into the AI and stop it.
Whoa. Independence Day.
Yeah. And it's Independence Day was kind of a good example because they had not been interacting with these aliens before. But at this point, the antagonist and the protagonist are step in step together. So there's never that opportunity for one of them to quite get far enough ahead of the other one to be the winner in the game. And so it ends up just being a zero-sum game.
Here's an interest. So my internet is satellite, and via satellite tells us all the time someone in Nigeria could be using our Wi-Fi signal to explain their claim we're streaming 24/7. Any truth to that? Does that make any sense? I'm not even. Sure.
I'm trying to understand exactly what they mean by saying someone in Nigeria be using our Wi-Fi signal.
Yeah.
Now,
Unless they're like spoofing it, but now that would be IP, not Wi-Fi.
well, so what you run into with the satellite is, in a lot of ways, some of those satellites services, because they're pretty low tech in a sense of everything that they have the capability of sticking on that thing in outer space, do end up sharing a source IP. Now, for you trying to keep your information a little bit more secure, it's actually a pretty good thing, because you're sharing an IP address with probably a dozen other people, and they just handle the sessions on the inside there with their equipment. So but that's probably what I'm thinking they're referring to, is that somebody else could be using the same satellite and showing up as the same person. So if somebody's tracking them by IP address.
So it's almost like an old party phone sort of thing, They're tracking the satellite, and so everyone, like you said, that's using it at a time is lumped together as one, fused human.
I'm thinking that might be what you're talking about, because I'm not quite understanding how or what somebody would mean by they're using the information. I don't think it's anything that's being hijacked.
Say people on it. Okay, this doesn't make sense, Kerry, because the Wi-Fi, it's a radio signal.
Well, there is the other thing. So they could spoof the source and be using the amount of data that they're allotted per month.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So satellites are susceptible to source spoofing, and that's very common with a lot of your online games that have to do with location.
Pokemon Go.
It's a big problem in the game too, where people spoof their location, but it's not so much. A lot of the original spoofing of locations got botched, and they said, no, you can't do this anymore, and we found ways to detect it. So people actually started sharing sources. So, hey, you're in Germany, I want to go do this. So they would clone this phone in Germany, and suddenly they would appear as if they're that phone in Germany. So the spoofing took another level of exchange, instead of just changing your location and lying to it, which is easily detectable now.
So what it sounds like then is someone in Nigeria could be spoofing, pretending they are Kiri Hyatt and using up her data.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that's always possible. I mean, but again, you would have to have been exploited in some way or another. So somebody would have to have found out your information. Now, that doesn't mean you personally. And this is what's happened in a lot of data breaches, where this data was leaked out in a sense. Which, forget data points, you've got their entire dossier on the person because the company wasn't secure and they lost the data. And
well, actually, okay, that brings up another thing. All the security cameras all over everywhere now. I mean, so many security cameras, even, like my neighbors down the street, they have a whole bunch of cameras outside their house that are tied into their internet. Every bank, every ATM, every gas pump, all these have these cameras that are seeing you going around all day.
Yeah.
Do you have anything about facial recognition? And
so the facial recognition thing has been, again, it's something else that the EFF is very strong on, is their stance on not being able to use facial recognition for municipal purposes. We're already getting to the point, like I said, there's cameras everywhere, and some of these cameras aren't secure. Like, you have an access camera at your house, or if you have a Ring camera that you're already willingly sharing the data with law enforcement, who gets a picture of your face 10 times a day from 10 different angles from you going in and out of your own house.
And over time, and as your hair grows, and
right, so they get pretty strong on the facial recognition. Now I've taken my advantage of this mask wearing situation, and I'll have a full baklava on and a hat and glasses whenever I go into the store. Before all this, you'd have got shot on sight for that in most cases.
Yep. But we're going into a bank with a mask on,
right? But Target and Walmart both every day openly use facial recognition, and it's a big part of everything now. So the idea of the EFF saying that let's protect people from this being used for legislation. Right now, a lot of cop cars you'll see that have like a little thing that looks like a camera. It's usually shaped like this, got 3 or 4 lenses on it. That's an IR laser, a LiDAR, and a camera. And those are used for reading license plates. Come up perfectly clear every time, no matter what lighting conditions, no matter how dirty they are, because they take the camera image, they take the LiDAR image to take off the layers that are under there, and then they take the IR to ignite to make the license plate shine better, to reduce the contrast. And there's been laws that are passed that said that you can't just go scan people's license plate and then wait for them to show up with their car and arrest them if you think they have a warrant. Question being whether or not they have somebody else's car or something like that. But a lot of those have been overturned now, and we even had some cases here in Houston where people were arrested under that thing, because in an instance where they said, I just scanned this license plate, this person has a bad warrant, and they go to the judge and they get a raid type or whatever type of warrant that they need to intercept the person, and then they get it signed off within an hour, this person's still in the store, and they can arrest them right there. So with facial recognition, you don't have that question of, is this license plate that person's or not? It's pretty accurate, but it's also got flaws. We'll step into that in a second. But they want to protect.
You can see a situation where the cameras in Walmart, the security cams are tied directly into the cops' facial recognition. A person with a warrant walks in, and the cops are automatically alerted by their facial recognition attachment to the Walmart cameras. Sort of thing.
And so we have the right to not have a unlawful search and seizure, and that's kind of where we get protected right now. So as long as our Constitution and our federal government and our Supreme Court stay intact, those are okay. But,
I mean, China is already doing this thing where every person has a rating based on everything they do, who they talk to, where they go, what websites they do.
And you already have it here. You already have it here. I was showing that to my mother, and she actually had a fairly low score on it because of relatives we probably haven't talked to in ever, and but they happen to be Facebook friends or family Facebook friends, and that starts to attack your social score. I don't know the site offhand, but I'm sure you can go search my social rating and look for your name. If you're like me and you don't use a real name on your accounts, then you have to search for that name, but it will still line up.
Yeah.
And then that brings up another point. Off of your devices, if you go just Google your name, you'll find several spooky people, spelled PIPL, sites that have all this information, and you'll usually see it's not very accurate, but enough of it's accurate. You're like, yeah, I did live at that address. God, that's not how much money I make. That's not my sister. Oh, that is my brother, my mother. Okay. Yeah. You can go onto these sites and take that link and then go to their privacy policies and say, I want to opt out of this and have that stuff removed. Mm-hmm. And you'll probably find that I think I went through 48 sites on my own family's names to get it removed from those. So it was, over 100 hits of having to submit individual opt-out forms to take that data off.
Oh, okay. Actually, that ties in. Is there a way to erase your online presence?
So in the EU, there are some laws now with EU privacy, and one of them it's called different things through different countries. But your right to disappear, your right to deletion, and this has turned into a double-edged sword real quick. What happened in a lot of cases was criminals that needed to cover their tracks used this right to, have the government force everybody in the country that had any information on them to delete it. And suddenly you couldn't track all their criminal activity anymore. And it turned out it is, because you still have the right to not exist in a lot of these EU countries, still being used by criminals today to make sure they cover their tracks.
Wow. I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah, because it does delete it everywhere.
Yeah, because I mean, Europe and Britain and all of them were very big on those privacy laws whenever this stuff started. And how far do you push it? And at what cost to.
Yeah. Well, and like so much of it, all this came about because people are lazy and they just want convenience over security, and they're just willing to just go with whatever is put in front of them. Really,
I don't like calling it lazy. I generally refer to it as
maybe ignorant would be
the boiling frog syndrome. We were very slowly put into this pot of boiling water, and when we're first above it, a nice little steam bath, and just enjoy the warm jacuzzi, and next thing you know, you're cooked.
So we kind of got sucked in over time.
Yeah, and again, you'd use the example of the Target card and your Kroger's card. These were the earliest forms of giving up your privacy. And I remember I worked at Randall's whenever I was like 14 or something like that, and they had that card, and I was like, oh, I'm just put in a fake phone number. I just remember the fake phone number, and I still do that to this day. So like anywhere that has your phone number, I use a different one.
Here's a little secret hack. Like when you go to the gas pump and they ask for your loyalty number, your phone number, 8675309. You can 8675309. That is almost guaranteed someone has used that as the phone number for their loyalty thing.
Yep. I knew that was coming when you first said
it. Yep. Us older people know that song. You new kids, you look it up on YouTube. 8675309.
The other one that's super common is this 555-5555. I'm not sure why that one is.
Oh, that's from Hollywood, because the movies they can't use a real zip code, so they use 555. Yeah.
So yeah, that's the other common one on the gas station of the store. If you don't want to put your information in, but you still want to get the benefits of the card. And that's again, nothing is free. You're going to pay a price for anything, no matter how insignificant you think it is. Saving 39 cents on your corn, which these days with the grocery prices, it adds up. And you're like, yeah, I want to save that money, but you don't have to give them your information. Just give them some random phone number that you can remember.
8675. Yeah.
But, I
mean, eventually they're going to do it all by facial recognition. Look at the camera, blink. Okay, yeah, you get 5 cents off your gas because we know who you are.
Yeah. And then I remember all the talks when we were kids about the mark of the beast. I went to church and we always talked about one day people are going to take the mark of the beast in order to make purchases. And again, not being religious or political, but man.
Everything old is new. Okay, what else do you have? Anything else you think people need to know on this subject? Or
well, I mean,
maybe just recap. There's a huge amount of data. Everything you've bought, every website you've gone to, it all has been used to make a you.
Yeah. And then the further information of the devices that you have in your house, your IoTs, your thermostat, and hey, let's make sure that this thermostat is set that we're away from home. You always heard the lesson saying don't post on Facebook that you're going on vacation, especially if you have public post. And we mentioned the phones and going through the privacy settings in those, but if you're going to have to use Facebook, you have to check those privacy settings regularly, because a lot of people find that they went through and they checked all 100 of these privacy settings, and next update, suddenly they're all reverted back to some default setting. And Facebook told you. They gave it to you in a very clear 600-page document that said, here's our updated terms of service.
Yep.
But the step further is, it said go off grid. No Facebook app, no Messenger, just, you're going to use the Messenger, use Signal. Take all the applications off your phone that you can't absolutely live without. Don't browse the internet on your phone unless you have to. It's just you can start breaking yourself off of that grid if you really wanted to. And your line of teachings with the plants and stuff like that, it goes hand in hand with this, and that's probably why we discussed having me on here, because these things are difficult, uncomfortable thing to do. Just like it's difficult and comfortable to build that raised bed in your backyard and be on your knees and then in that soil and crawling around in the woods trying to find out which bug and plant it's okay to eat.
And it's like, as a small business owner, I mean, we live and die by social media. So, you know, it's the great advertiser, but we've given away so much to maintain it.
As a business, though, I mean, you have a little bit of a benefit because you're not as much giving out your personal stuff, and you don't have to have it on your phone, have it on your work phone. And I've always treated this, you know, I've always accepted a work phone as a tool whenever it's provided, and usually I don't use that phone. I'll forward the calls, but then that phone, whatever software work wants to put on it, and then, you know, like right now, my daughter plays Pokemon on it, but I don't search the internet on it. I don't do anything on it. I don't log into Facebook. I don't take pictures with it. Everything will be done from a secondary phone that will then be transmitted to email that then gets downloaded to this phone. And I've always kept these layers of separation from things. And you know, somebody might think you're a drug dealer because you got 3 phones, but MeWe. What did I hear about that one recently? That's a pretty new one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's another one of those social media sites.
Don't trust any of them right now.
Yeah, and that's what I think. Anything posted anywhere can and will be used against you at some point.
Yeah, especially if it's new and you don't know what kind of security. Everybody felt confident about Parlay. I mean, everybody was very bold and confident on Parlay, and Parlay burned them bad.
Yeah, because they had really poor security, so the person was able to download everything that had ever been posted. Maybe not everything, but a huge chunk of data. Yeah.
And I mean, the security was literally so bad that you wonder if it wasn't intentional.
See, that I admit, I'm reading so many sci-fi books and so forth. I wonder how much of it is, like you use the term, a honeypot, something that's just so attractive you got to check it out, and it's a trap. Even some of the big stuff. So,
I mean, you know, every organization probably has some sort of government plan in it. I forget who was discussing that recently. It wasn't necessarily one of the crazy ones, but they were talking about you know, whether you think you're a militia or a advocacy group or Greenpeace or PETA, every one of them's got somebody who's working for the government there, and they may wholeheartedly believe what they're doing too.
Yeah.
They're still feeding all that information back to somebody.
Yeah, it was like with the Proud Boys. They said the leader was a FBI snitch.
I thought he was like the ex-Vice guy. We got to work for Vice News.
Yeah, something. Yeah, but he was like the black Cuban guy. Yeah, but it turns out.
Oh yeah, that was the one for work for Vice News. Maybe it was.
Okay. Yeah.
I haven't followed all that stuff as much, you know, because I'm kind of, if I'm a militia, I'm my own militia, and whatever neighbors will be my my party.
I get a lot of people trying to convert me to their cause. So, like,
if it even sniffs of an organization, I kind of stay away from it.
Yep. So it's okay. Anything else? You know, we talked about the Internet of Things, the refrigerator that knows what's going on, your car, you know, the smart car with all its stuff, and you know, all this is.
I mean, and there have been cars that were hacked too. I even had one of the Jeep Cherokees that was one of the ones that was hacked. Day one, I figured out that this thing actually had a service key to it that used a universal key, private key. So I figured out how to get into the radio and change the private key, but then it turned out every time I went to the dealership, they reset my radio, and then I couldn't start the car afterwards.
Whoops.
So I had to always bring my USB and computer with me when I went to get service done, because I had to redo my encryption on my stereo. Like, yeah, all the controls were in that stereo. Like, it wasn't an onboard computer somewhere; it was all in that radio.
Oh wow! Okay. Yeah. Do you think there's going to be a pushback? Do you think people are going to? I keep thinking of Dune, the series Dune, where there was a huge rebellion against, you know, computers, because, you know, they caused too many problems for mankind, and so they kind of went back from that. I don't see us turning the clock back.
Yeah, I don't see us turning the clock back either. And I've often asked myself, if I come across it, if I find that reset button, could I push it? Could I be the one to save humanity at the cost of everybody's convenience, probably the cost of a lot of lives, the cost of a lot of riots, and the cost of a lot of wars? Can we? It's like is there the path back? And there really isn't without
Then
pain, great pain. So you're never going to go back that way. So your path is forward, and if it's something you're honestly concerned about, start your reading, and take those simple steps like we talked about, the browser, and don't save your passwords, and go check out EFF and EFF.org and their information and what they do. If it's something that that you can't be an advocate for, you can donate a few bucks to them and say, hey, thank you for fighting for me, because that's all they do, and they do it globally. It's not just the United States. We talked about the onion layers of a process control network, but the same thing kind of goes for your personal network. Your outside layer is always that password. And a lot of people have been taught you got to have this password that has two characters, two numbers, and two symbols, and it must be at least 8 characters long. What you've just done there is you've taken an 8-character password that could be randomized and fixed 3 points in it: 2 uppercase, 2 lowercase, 2 symbols, and 2 numbers. You've just narrowed what could have been a password that would take eons to crack in 10 minutes.
oof.
Don't ever use those passwords. I don't know who ever thought of teaching people that. You want to use a password, use a 4-word phrase. Maybe it's a phrase maybe it's random words: horse, wire, car, street. Or mix them up a little bit and say, let's change these E's to a 3 in this one. Those will be, and you can go to websites and say how secure is my password, and type in your password, and they'll tell you at current computing powers, this is how long it would take to crack your password. Yeah. That's what you want to use, not somebody's requirements. But then you'll run into a website that will tell you this: you have to have this password, and you can fit your 4-word password into there. But you'll find that you put any sort of 4-word phrase, even without complications in it, it's going to be millions of years of current computing power to track.
Until the quantum computers show up, and then
fortunately, quantum computers can currently only do one problem at a time.
Yeah.
A very, very complicated problem, but they can only do one problem at a time and output that, and they're done.
Yeah. Okay. So strong passwords, limit what you share. Yeah, it's hard. Very hard. So okay. Yeah, but like John says, the whole gray man, do what you can to make yourself, I don't know if you could make your data useless, but obscure it somehow. And hopefully going forward, the model stops this week, and a year from now you have changed enough where it is harder for them to correlate all this data
as your 4th dimensional factor, which is always time, is always going to be the greatest skew on any points of data. Now, you can use those points of data still to try to find something, but it's probably not accurate anymore. A lot of your locating data points that people use to find patterns. Wall Street Journal had a big thing on this a long time ago. If you want to look at the Wall Street Journal personal mapping, something they were using anonymous data, and then somebody proved that this anonymous data was trackable. That was a while back, but again, once it's old enough, the Starbucks may have closed. You may not like Starbucks anymore, and you go to Trader Joe's or whatever it is. And so the time is always going to skew those. So the more effort you can make now is going to be kind of like, I need to stop smoking, because if I don't stop smoking, I have to, make that healing process. And if I wait until I'm too old, I won't have time to heal anymore. So then,
That makes sense. So yeah, start sooner. Like they say, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best is right now. Yeah. That's the best thing we can do to screw up the data is just stop what they're collecting. Okay, awesome. Thank you. I think people
we'll
got
end
a
with
lot of questions, or got a lot of usefulness out of this. A lot of shocked face icons, but yeah, they know you. They know you, better than probably any family member knows you.
we'll end with an Einstein quote here. A foolish faith in authority is the worst enemy of man. Einstein was a very smart man, and we know this. So think about it for a second.
Very much true. And we've been seeing it played over and over in the last days, weeks, and months. Just, yeah. What happens when you put too much trust in the powers that be? All right. At that note, there's probably a red dot, from us, the government sniper on my chest here. So I think we can probably sign off for now. Like I said, I told people we're going to go a bit long, but it looked like a lot of people hung in here.
It's this long already.
Okay. So, and people are just asking VPNs. A recap on that. Don't go with the free VPN. You want to go with something you pay for.
Yeah, I don't. Like I said, I don't give out product names, because especially if tomorrow that product's hacked and they're like, "Oh, this guy said to do that. I got his picture." But generally, don't go with the free ones. But you'll see some of them that are like free to a limit and pay for a higher subscription. Some of those are probably generally okay. But again, go to DuckDuckGo and search best VPNs today, and you'll generally start finding some references, and you can find some similarities in those references. Kind of like we're talking about our data points. Take 2 or 3 data points, and if you see all 3 people recommend this one number 1, hey, that's the one you probably want to use.
Okay, quick. How much does it usually cost, like, per month? Do you have an idea for like
there's one that I use that's only $49 a year.
Oh wow, yeah, that's worth it then.
Yeah, so I mean they're going to be fairly cheap, because they're trying to usually be people that are building off of another market. So like Norton and Kaspersky and all these other ones have their own service, but what they want is that name recognition, and they're gonna be like, "Hey, you use the Norton VPN, you should use the Norton antivirus too, and pay us $19 for that. You should use the Norton firewall and pay us $19 a month for that."
So then there's going to be the Starbucks VPN and the Google VPN. Trust us. All right, everyone is signing off here. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very, very good topic. Hopefully, it opens some eyes. They can make some changes, because we got to.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone. I will see you at the donut shop tomorrow. Have a great evening. Start going through your phone. Start, deleting things you're not using anymore and checking those security things. All right. Have a great one. Ending broadcast.